The Lord will lead you on a journey that you never imagined if you follow Him. They began in early 2017 as young kids, not knowing where their name would take them. But they knew they wanted to play music, so they set out to do just that. Cutter and Cash Singleton, ages 17 and 14, along with their group, Cutter and Cash in the Kentucky Grass, has traveled coast to coast, playing over 400 shows, traveling over 200,000 miles, and recently made their debut on the Grand Ole Opry. This is their story. This is today's Nashville. This is faith. Cutter and Cash in the Kentucky Grass. I am so excited that you're here with today's Nashville. Welcome.
Well, thank you for having us. We're glad to be here.
You guys have been all over the place.
Well, a little bit here and there.
Okay, Cutter, Cash, Brennan.
That's right.
That's right. That's it.
You know, when I started watching you all, I was so surprised at your age. 17?
That's it.
14?
There you go.
Brennan, you're the oldest one.
Don't worry about me.
But it's amazing. You are, I have to say, you're my youngest guest I've ever had
Is
on
that
my
right?
show.
Well,
So
we're
there
honored.
you
Happy to
go.
do it. We're
very
honored.
honored.
Don't let her down.
we got to keep everything up here.
But I'm so excited. So you guys are awfully young, but we're going to go back a little bit. I want to know how you even started this. Love your look.
Well, thank
Well,
you.
thank you.
Very much. It really kind of started, I was 4 years old, and I was riding in the back seat of Mom and Dad's car, and we were driving around. Actually, we're from Western Kentucky, and so we were actually driving around in the elk and bison range at the land between the lakes over there. And they have, you can pay and you can go through and see these elk and bison. I just thought that was the greatest thing, you know. And so I guess Cash would have been, he'd have been one.
I
So
was
he would have been
little
with us,
bitty.
but of course,
I didn't remember.
no. So I heard on the radio, we'd tune into a local radio station, and they'd play the Ballad of Jed Clampett, the old Platinum Scruggs standard that was used on those television programs, Beverly Hillbillies. And I heard that, and I said, Mom, what is that? What is that? You know? And she said, well, that's bluegrass. I said, well, what is that instrument? You know, I knew enough about it to know what an instrument is, you know, a guitar, but I'd never really heard of a banjo.
4 years old.
4 years old. And she said, well, that's a banjo. I said, well, I want a banjo for Christmas. And so Christmas time come around, I had turned 5 in September, and so that was just a little bit before then. So I had turned 5, and New Year's Day of that year, I took my first banjo lesson. That had been 2012.
Well, what was it like to open that banjo at Christmas morning?
Well, I was really upset. I was very upset because I didn't see the banjo at first. And I opened everything, and there was no banjo. And my mom and dad said, well, look behind the tree. And I turned around there, and that banjo was sitting there wrapped up in a case. So you could tell what it was, and it just tickled me to death. I will never forget seeing that. 5 years old, that right there was what sparked it all. So I started playing the banjo, and started taking lessons from a fellow named Jack Martin out of Paducah, Kentucky. And Jack played the bass for Bill Monroe and played the dobro for Lester Flatt for several years. So I'm a well-accomplished bluegrass musician as far as that's concerned, and I played for Lester all over the country on the Opry, you know, just all kinds of things. So I learned a whole lot about the music, you know, as far as that's concerned, but I learned to appreciate the history of it and those stories.
How old were you at this time?
I took that first lesson right there on New Year's Day. And so that was 5 years old, and I took lessons from him for about 4 years. And he said, well, that's about all I can teach you as far as the banjo is concerned. He said, won't you let me come on with you and play banjo for my group? And so I played there with him locally, and that was great. And I got a lot of experience as far as showmanship and how to handle a stage. I guess I sparked an interest in him.
That's right.
And
Maybe
how
a
old
little
were you?
competition involved there.
And how old were you then?
Whenever I started, I was 4 or 5. And I played it throughout 2019, I guess. And then I swapped over to mandolin. I don't have it as interesting a
what
story.
instrument did you start when you were young?
Guitar.
Guitar.
So it's banjo and guitar, very
Okay.
similar to the
Flat
Flat
and
Scruggs
Scruggs.
style show, which is kind of what we had styled it after. You know, had the hats like we're wearing in the old colonel ties, you know, as they call them, and that's kind of what we had styled it after. Which we still draw a lot of inspiration from Flat and Scruggs, and then a lot of the heroes of bluegrass. I guess around that time we did a swap, because we wanted to start singing together. We found out that we could sing together, and so I started taking the lead, and Cash had that high tenor voice, and it didn't work to have a banjo and a guitar as well. And so I started playing the guitar, and Cash learned how to play the mandolin, and that really worked. And it's what we're kind of doing today.
That's what we're doing today.
So is it just the two of you and your family, or do you have other siblings?
It's just the two of us.
Okay.
It's the two of us.
And Brennan, tell me how you got involved.
Well, I'd been picking around for a while before we started playing, but nothing serious. And the boy's grandfather invited me down one night. He knew that I played the bass. And I went down to their house, and Cutter was there, and we had a jam session, and it just kind of rolled out.
Now, how old were you all during this?
They would have been, what would you have been, about 10?
I was 6 or 7.
9 or 10, and he would have been young.
Little bitty.
So we did our first show together not long after that. And Brennan's been with us ever since.
Yeah,
Brennan now
7 years.
lives right across the road from us, literally across the road from us. So that makes for great rehearsal and easy traveling, just run right across the road, pick up Brennan, and let's go.
Out we go.
So you all are so young. So is this something that you knew right away at a young age, that this is the career path I want to go on, or was there anything else? I mean, you just graduated from high school, correct?
And
you're in
Freshman.
freshman.
I'll be a sophomore this year.
So you're just starting high school.
Yes, ma'am.
I knew just as soon as I picked up a banjo and I played my first show, I'll never forget that feeling. They said, don't be nervous or anything. You don't want to do that. And they said, it'll all be all right. And I never really had any sort of nerves about it. I knew I wanted to do that. That was so exciting for me to be able to perform in front of people. And I'll never forget, I played my first show at the Kentucky Opry in Draftonville, Kentucky, which we're frequent guests there every now and then, a couple times a year or something like that. And so I remember standing on that stage, and there was a feeling, I don't know, it's hard to explain. And it was a rush, I guess, of adrenaline. And I will never forget that I thought, this right here is what I want to do. And I'm going to make sure that it happens. I'm going to try everything I can and make sure to keep my faith in the Lord. And that's we're so blessed. We really have been.
We're going to talk about your faith in a minute, but I love your style. I love your look.
Thank you.
Who inspires you?
There's lots of people that inspire us, and I think that's important. I try to take something away from everybody that I'm around, whether it's good or bad. You can learn something from them, and what to do or what not to do. So I try to draw a little bit of inspiration from everybody that I am around. I think that's important. I really do.
What about you, Cash?
I'm about the same way. We draw a lot of inspiration from everybody, from Flat to Scruggs to even Porter Wagner with the rhinestones.
That's, his name came up when I started looking at your style, and I thought, boy, they're bringing back the Porter Wagner.
We're big Porter fans. We love Porter.
But there's been so many bluegrass heroes that they've paved the way to allow new generations to do what we're able to do today. So we have to pay them some respect, and I want to make sure we do that.
When we come back, we're going to talk about Jeannie Seely. We're going to talk about your faith. We're going to listen to you and your songs. And
Let's do it.
Okay, we'll be right back. Now, we have a mutual friend, Jeannie Seely. She's been on my show. Absolutely love her. But she loves you guys too, doesn't she?
We sure thank the world of her. We love her. We really do. I can say that with 100% confidence. We love Jeannie Seely. We really do.
There's a story about you guys going to the Grand Ole Opry when you were little, right?
That's correct.
Yes,
Tell me about it.
It was my first time, both our first time at the Grand Ole Opry House. We'd been to see a show at the Ryman, and I wanted to do that. We started out early on, and I got to learn that history, and so I wanted to go there. And so it worked out, was able to do that. It was during the winter time.
How old were you then?
I would have been 8. And so I saw my first Opry show. And so a few years later, we went to the Grand Ole Opry House and saw the show there. And Jeannie was there. Of course, we dressed up as
suits and ties.
and we played the
So
part.
you were 8 and you were
5 or 6, I guess.
Okay.
And so went out and sat. We were on the 3rd row. I can tell you exactly where we were sitting, right in front of Eddie Stubbs. And we were sitting there on the 3rd row, over
right
there,
side,
over there by the announcer. And Jeannie come out. It was Jeannie and Bobby Osborne. She was hosting that night, and Bobby had come out and he did Rocky Top, his usual set, and that was just great to us because we were huge Osborne Brothers fans. And so saw them do Rocky Top and all that. And she said, I told you all you know that music, you know, and she'd set it up like that before. And she come right over to the side of the stage and she said, I want to point these boys out right here. She said, that's the future generation of good musicians right there, I can tell. And I just looked at Cash, I was like, oh my gosh. And so they brought the house lights up, put the spotlight on us, asked us to stand up and wave at everybody. And it was, she said, we'll find out more about those boys later. And she turned it back to Eddie Stubbs. He said, I think I've still got those ties at home. You know, it was a real neat thing. But I never in a million years would have ever dreamt that we would be as close as we are with Jeannie now. I never would have thought anything like that would have panned out. And it's just so unbelievable to me.
Tell me how it happened.
We were at the Ernest Tubb Midnight Jamboree a few years later. Hadn't seen Jeannie, hadn't spoke to her or anything since that night, you know, and it was just a real, she was on stage and we were down there kind of thing. So we went to see Rhonda Vincent's induction at the Opry. We didn't go, but we went to the after party at the Ernest Tubb Midnight Jamboree. She hosted that night over there, so we wanted to go see that. And her and Jeannie just released a song together, and so I thought, well, maybe we can just meet her. You know, that'd be pretty neat. That's a bucket list thing. I'd like to do that. So we went on over, and sure enough, Jeannie come out on stage, and she did the song with Rhonda, and I could tell she was leaving. She went and grabbed her purse and was headed out, and I told Cash, I said, here's our chance. I said, we've got to take it. And so I got up, grabbed Cash, and I said, Brennan, let's go. He said, no, I'm watching the show. So we left Brennan. I said, I'm not waiting. I said, we're going. And so me and Cash took off, and just the two of us, we run right out front there. And
waited at the door.
There's a chance she might come out the front or might come out the back. Well, we're going to be here waiting. And sure enough, she walked right out the front door there, and we were standing there. I said, Miss Seely, I said, we're big fans of yours. I said, would it be all right if we get our picture made with you? Of course, that tickled her, and we got our picture made and talked to her for, I guess, 10 or 15 minutes. It was in the wintertime. It was cold. But we sat there and talked for a long time, and she said, well, let's keep in touch, you know.
Did she remember you from meeting you or pointing you out
Very
years
vividly.
ago?
Not a whole lot.
Okay.
So that was, well, I don't even know if we brought it up, to tell you the truth. We were just kind of in awe of the moment. You know, we were getting to get our picture made with somebody like that. So I guess it was about a year or so later, we were booked on the same show as the Lincoln Jamboree up in Hodgsonville, Kentucky, to open the show for Jeannie and her band. And so we were just totally blown away that was going to happen. We were so excited.
It was.
You know, we've got to meet her now, and now we're going to be able to talk shop with her backstage and open the show up and get to talk to her some. So that was just, we just couldn't wait. So we went up there and we did it.
We did.
And
What do you think about it, Cash?
Oh my gosh. I mean, we're so blessed to be able to do this. And looking back on it, it's just lined up perfectly, you know. And it's just amazing, to be honest with you.
It really is. And what a great show that was. Jeannie called us back to sing a song with her during that show, and we lined up several other things. And a little bit later, I guess 6 or 8 months or so, she sent us a song to do called Call of Kentucky. And so we were able to, we heard a little bit of a demonstration that she'd done on that. And she sent us a demo, and the Osborne brothers had actually done that with her. And so it was a bluegrass song. And she said, we'll see what y'all can do with that. And so we played around with it. And we were in Nashville not too long after that. And Lynn Owsley, they talk about how things just totally off the wall, strangely line up. Lynn Owsley had called and he said, come on down. He said, Junior Brown is going to be down here at Nashville. He said, he's going to be playing. He said, I know you're a big fan of Junior Brown's. I said, so come on down and see Junior. Well, I called Jeannie. I said, well, we having nothing going on. Thought that might be something good for us to do. Go grab lunch or supper after or something and then go see Junior. Well, she had something else going on, but Jean, her husband, wanted to go. We're big fans of Gene Ward, too. And so Gene went with us, and Jeannie dropped him off down there, and we took him back home after the show. But anyway, he dropped in, and we waited and waited for Junior Brown, and Junior was at the Opry that night. But Junior got tied up at Soundcheck or wherever, and it wasn't able to go. So I thanked Lynn, which was a Texas troubadour and worked for Ernest Tubb. He's done all kinds of cool stuff. But I told him how much we appreciated it and enjoyed what he did, his show. And so we left, took Gene back home, and he said, well, y'all got to see the river. And so I thought, oh my gosh, we're going to get to go inside the house.
Because we see the pictures on Facebook every week or every day about Jeannie Seely's river post.
So took off, went inside the house. And we talked out on the back deck for about 3 hours, just about all kinds of stuff. She said, well, I'm hungry. What do you say we go to Cock of the Walk? And so that's what we did, and we took off. And whenever we sat down and talked to the table there, and whenever we left that evening, we had a session booked for our first recording session to make our first records. And that was just totally bizarre to me.
We didn't sleep
I
for
know,
a
and you
few
guys
nights.
have already been on the Grand Ole Opry recently.
That's true.
Yes, ma'am.
What was it like stepping out on that stage?
There's no way to describe it, to be honest with
It was
you.
pretty wild.
Was it?
It was
What do you
wild.
think, Brennan?
Oh, it was just standing in the wings and everybody that you hear on the radio standing there beside you, and just thinking, man, this is fixing to happen. It's really fixing to happen, and it did.
What your parents all think about all this?
Well, they've been so supportive of us, and I'll be the first to tell you, without that support,
We wouldn't be able to do this.
no, and so many aren't as blessed and as fortunate as we are to have that support. But we try our best to be as thankful as we are for that, because without that, we wouldn't be able to pursue something like this. And so we're so thankful for that. But it's just totally unbelievable the way God has lined everything up for us this far, and I just can't wait to see what's coming next. That's the most exciting part, just turning loose and looking and saying, all right, what. We don't know what's coming, but He does, and so we just have to turn it loose, and that's so exciting.
Oh, yeah.
What do you think, Cash?
It's just so exciting to see what's next, and we couldn't do anything without Him, and believing in Him and praying to Him, and
He's a good God.
that's
isn't he?
right. He sure is.
We're going to listen to one of your songs when we come back. We're going to talk about your school and what it's like still being in school and traveling and touring. And can't wait to hear your song. We'll
All
be
right.
right back. Guys, I want to hear the song that you played on the Grand Ole Opry.
All right, let's
All
do
right,
it.
let's-
A little bit of mamas. Don't let your babies grow up to be cowboys. 1, 2, 3. Now cowboys ain't easy to love and they're harder to hold. They'd rather just give you a song and diamonds or gold.
Star belt buckles and old faded Levi's, and each night begins a new day. If you don't understand him or he don't die young, he'll probably just ride away.
Mamas, don't let your babies grow up to be cowboys. Don't let them pick guitars and drive the old trucks. Let them be doctors and lawyers and such. Mamas, don't let your babies grow up to be cowboys. 'Cause they'll never stay home and they're always alone, even with someone they love. Cowboys like smoky old pool rooms and clear mountain mornings. All those little warm puppies and children and girls of the night.
Them that don't know him won't like him, and them that do sometimes don't know how to take him. He ain't wrong, he's just different, but his pride won't let him do the things to make you think he's right.
Mamas, don't let your babies grow up to be cowboys. Now don't let them pick guitars and drive them old trucks. Let them be doctors and lawyers and such. Mamas, don't let your babies grow up to be cowboys. 'Cause they'll never stay home and they're always alone, even with someone they love.
goodness. You guys are so much fun. That was wonderful.
Well, thank you.
What made you choose that song?
Well, that's
It's a funny story. It's a real
We didn't
funny
have a
story.
choice, did we?
That's the best part of the whole song. We had just left the Williamson County Fair down here around Nashville, Tennessee area, Franklin to be exact, and we played down there. They're fixing to do that again this year, so we're
2
excited
weeks, I
about
think.
that. That's right. And so anyhow, left down there, and it was late at night, Jeannie had called. Of course, whenever she calls, you answer the phone. And so we were all sitting back there in the back of the van, and I said, well, what's going on? She said, I've had a great idea. And most of the time, they are good ideas. I 100% believe that. She comes up with some wild stuff. And I said, well, what are you thinking, Jeannie? She said, I've got us a song. She said, we've got to get in the studio. And she said, let's do it. I said, well, what is it? She said, what if we did an up-tempo, high-speed bluegrass version of Mamas Don't Let Your Babies Grow Up to Be Cowboys? And I looked at Cash about like that. And I thought, there's no way that will ever work. That's not a bluegrass song. There's just no way we could do anything with that song. But I said, okay, Jeannie, sounds like a good idea, because that's just what you say. And so we sat down and we started going through it. And I thought, my gosh, the woman's a genius, because it really
worked out.
Clicked. And I thought, man, this is great. And I love doing that song. It is so much fun. And I love doing it in different crowds, because different crowds react different ways. But the majority of the crowds we play in, they are just totally blown away that that's what it is. You start out, they don't expect it. And especially whenever Cash hits that high note, I love that part.
I think out of everything we've recorded, that's the best thing we've recorded.
I love
And we
that
didn't
song.
expect
And you do have a
She was
new
right on the
album
mark.
coming out,
Yes,
right?
we've got
Okay.
more exciting stuff coming soon. So it's wild stuff. But
So this
I
was
love
your
this
first
song.
one recorded then? with
This
Jeannie?
was the first one released. So we are real tickled about it.
That is so exciting. So how do you, Cash, you're going to be a sophomore. How do you put your music and school together, and how does all that work?
Well, I kind of just do it when I can. So I'll go when I can, and then they'll send me some work to do on the road, but I won't really do it. But I get by.
So do you go to a high school, or are you homeschooled?
I go to high school.
Okay.
I will say, we were Friday night with Rhonda Vincent. Of course, Crossville, Tennessee is quite a ways from Marion, Kentucky. And looked out in the crowd, and there sat our superintendent. So I hope we're doing all right with everything. I think we've got her pulling for us.
Well, what's next? What do you guys?
Well, we've got actually 12 days of Pennsylvania coming up soon. So that starts this
Leave
Friday.
Friday.
So it's wild stuff.
Got a cruise later on in the
Got
year.
a cruise later on in the year. We got a very busy schedule, full of bluegrass festivals, and
Bill Anderson's show.
that'll be a lot of fun. That's September the 14th, and that'll be with us, of course. Bill Anderson, he's hosting it down there in his.
had Bill on the show?
Charlie McCoy.
Charlie McCoy is going to be there, but it's the Bill Anderson Performing Arts Center down there in his high school.
And Jeannie, too.
Yeah,
Can't leave
Jeannie,
her out.
can't leave Jeannie out. So that'll be a real exciting show down in Commerce, Georgia. So we're tickled about that. All kinds of crazy stuff. And you can find out more about that at TerryCutterandCash.com, and also on our Facebook page, too.
An important question I want to ask you. You guys are awfully young, influencing teens today. What would you say to them today as a teenager, and everything that you guys go through? And
Be yourself, really. Don't let anybody hold you back. Don't let anybody tell you can't do this or that, because that really damages somebody more than it helps somebody.
what do you think, Cutter?
Well, that's something that you really kind of have to figure out yourself, which that's a tough thing to do. But it's like Cash said, stand up for what you believe in, and have your faith in God, because He'll take care of you. But always make sure you're doing what you want, what you need to be doing. What He's telling you to do. That's the main thing. And I really believe that this is what we've been called to do, and I enjoy it so much. It is so much fun. So I always, I'll tell you like this. I always like throwing this in here, because there's no better advice than this, and it comes straight out of the mouth of Ernest Tubb. Be better to your neighbors, and you'll have better neighbors. And I just love that line. But that's something that you can live by at any point in your life, And so I think that's very key, and I try my best to do that. But there's so much advice that we've been given. it's unbelievable. I gotta start a book, especially of Jeannie's advice, because there's all kinds of that coming from out of.
There's a whole book of her advice.
Yeah, that would be great. Hey, will you take us out on a gospel song?
Let's do that. Let's keep with the theme, something upbeat, and have a little bit of fun here. Let's do a little bit of "I'm Just an Old Chunk of Coal." Hey, I'm just an old chunk of coal,
But I'm gonna be a diamond someday.
hey, I'm gonna grow and glow till I'm so blue, pure perfect. I'm gonna put a smile on everybody's face. And I'm gonna kneel and pray every day,
Lest I should become vain along the way.
hey, I'm just an old chunk of coal, now hold low. But I'm gonna be a diamond some. I'm gonna be a diamond someday.
Cutter, Cash, Brennan, thank you so much. What a blessing to have you on my show
Thank
today.
you so much.
Thank you.
What a pleasure it's been.
My friend, the Lord will take you on a journey that you would never imagine if you just trust Him. Follow Him today. This is today's Nashville. This is Faith.
Cornerstone Television wishes to thank all our faithful viewers whose consistent prayers and financial support have made this program possible.